listeners are as important as our guests. Join in on the conversation. 504-341-8255. The New Orleans Talk Network. About your quality of life.
Let everyone know you listen to
the New Orleans Talk Network.
Well, good morning, as we say here in the New Orleans Talk Network. It's Wednesday, Hump Day, and hopefully you're familiar enough to know that's also Bob's Variety Hour in this time slot, 8 to 9. We've been on now for over a year, bringing you what we hope is upbeat and informative and just kind of fun things in the middle of the week. We've got so much serious stuff going on, not only in our world, but also here on our station on the other days. So we kind of like to lighten it up to give you a break, just like the intention of the term Hump Day. You'll have to forgive me again. I got the nagging head cold, but I'd rather have this than the flu. I haven't had the flu, thank goodness. And anyway, so hopefully it won't be too much of a problem for you during the show. For those who follow us, we know that we schedule our weeks in Bob's Variety Hour, and this is the fourth Wednesday of the month. So during that, we have our feature called Know Your Nonprofit, whereby we introduce you to, and you may or may not already be aware of, an organization that serves our community in order to give them better exposure to the community, because oftentimes we have. Everyone knows about the big dogs, the United Ways and all. And we always see these in big disaster, Salvation Army. But we have a plethora of, not only us, almost all urban areas, of independent mom and pop shops, whatever you want to call them, small nonprofits that are out there finding things that need to be reserved or served and filling those needs very well. And unfortunately, unless they're able to get a lot of funding, which of course is tighter and tighter over the years with grants, and nowadays depending on them to actually do most of their generation of revenue, we want to give them the opportunity to get to you so you can see, hey, there's something I never even knew existed before. And I have this particular need that I or one of my loved ones could use. Today's topic is one that might be uncomfortable for some. Years ago, it was like a taboo subject. As I said, there's an old adage about never talk about politics or religion. And one of the things we always avoided at all costs was talking about death, because, we all feel, especially the younger we are and the more maybe naive, this invincibility, this immortality that slowly gets peeled away as we get older, and some of the ravages of old age start taking effect on this machine, this human body, which is just like any other machine that has moving parts that are subject to break or disease, etc., all during its lifetime. Years ago in the 1800s, England invented a term called hospice, Hospice. And what it was in those days, of course, they didn't have the elaborate hospitals and all we have, or even nursing homes. But it was a home, usually some type of home that's converted, or a building, many times run by one of the religious organizations that would take in people who are near death and don't have resources, whether it's family or don't have money, to help them traverse over from life to death. And it was a wonderful thing. They're very little known unless you live there, and of course was never even thought of, I don't believe, back in the United States until much, much later. I don't know the very first. I should have did some research and tell you when the very first hospice was in New Orleans, or not New Orleans, but in the USA. And I had done it a long time, but this old mind forgets about it. But I'm very proud of hospice because I just saw the value. In fact, right now I'm experiencing it with a very, very close friend. And this organization we have featured today is one, in fact, the one that is involved with this friend of ours. And I'm seeing how well they're doing is something I said, well, let me give them, since they're local, an opportunity as well. So again, we want to, for a lot of folks now, it's a lot more knowledgeable about hospice. When I first started advertising, did my several TV shows on it to introduce it around the turn of the century, it was again an unknown thing. It was a taboo thing. People were saying, oh, that's like euthanasia, that's just putting people to death early, or that's for people who don't care about their relatives, none of that is true. In fact, just the opposite. You're going to see that the care involved with hospice is going to be superlative compared to what you see in today's hospitals, no matter how expensive or private a hospital is and all the technology. The shortage of professionals, even though we keep turning them out of these med schools and all, is still evident that they just cannot give close one-on-one service. Also, I had done studies years ago when I first developed a product and actually convinced insurers to start insuring this before Medicare came along, was that most folks died, unless there was an accident or something, but even then, within the hospital confinement. And what we were seeing is if it wasn't an accident where they unfortunately didn't live beyond 1 or 2 days, the majority of confinements lasted approximately 3 weeks. And even way back then, I was studying it back in the 70s and 80s, it was hundreds of dollars, thousands in those days, but nothing like today, where rooms were maybe $200 a day at the most for ICU. But you were spending this time waiting for the patient. There's nothing else that could be done except to keep them alive till they passed. So it was costing not only the insurance companies, but the people, their co-pays, or if they had no insurance, phenomenal amount of sums for really just, I hate to say warehousing, but really just taking the burden off of the family and putting it in an inpatient setting until that individual passed. Well, hospice doesn't totally eliminate that, and we'll talk about that when we talk with our guest. And what I want to do is go ahead and bring our guest in first, and then of course we have to just introduce her, talk briefly about the organization, then we do our break, and then we're going to come in and talk about who qualifies for it and what are the great services that hospice offers to a family or to an individual, etc. So we're pleased to have this morning Ms. Jennifer Burgeron, who's the account executive from, I love the name, Heart of Hospice. Good morning, Jennifer. How are you?
Good morning, Bob. How are you?
We really appreciate you coming on in the morning. And we want to tell folks a little bit about your organization. You say you tell us again how long your organization's been here and some of the areas that are serviced by it.
Yes, sir. Heart of Hospice has been around for over 10 years serving the New Orleans area. We have expanded over the last 3 to 5 years, and we now have over 12 locations. We have 7 locations in Louisiana. We have 4 in Mississippi, and we also have 1 location in Arkansas.
Wow, great. That's very good. So since we don't, our network doesn't have limitations, if someone from none of those areas would hear us, and they would know that they could look you up. And we'll give out information near the end about your website and how else to contact you. And that way they can, of course, read more about the organization to feel more comfortable when they're making the selection.
Yes.
The one thing I wanted to ask, when I was back heavy in the business, an individual family, if they were knowledgeable about hospice and they were interested in having their loved one participate, many times the hospice would say, no, we don't take referrals, except it has to come from your doctor, because it's got to be doctor certified, and we'll go over those when you talk about qualifications. And usually that certification or that direction comes from the hospital itself, if they've been in the hospital before, and with their quality assurance coordinators. These are the nurses who specifically decide on every hospital inpatient where the patient is going to be discharged to, whether they're going home, whether they're going to a nursing home, etc. And they would kind of lead the avenue, the direction to a particular hospice for this patient. Could I ask, is that different today? In other words, if a family felt their patient, I mean, of course, it has to be, recognized and certified by the doctor that these conditions, which we'll talk about right after the break, but if a person in the family really felt this should be the approach, besides talking to the doctor, could they make approaches to a hospice about a possibility for one of their loved ones?
They absolutely can. A lot has changed with hospice, and it has come a long way since its inception. And nowadays, anyone can make a referral. A family member, a friend, a doctor, a nurse, a sitter, anyone who would like to get more information and knowledge about hospice.
Great. Because I found that was the only part. Here's an organization way back then that wasn't well known, and the first thing that the poor person who wanted to get information were kind of turned away from. It's like shutting the door in their face. Well, how do you want to learn if you're not going to share the information and say only your doctor or your hospital can speak to us about these things? So that's great news, because again, the more knowledge we get out there, the more people are interested, the more they want information should a future case or a present case arise. Anything else you want to tell us about your basic organization before we take a break and start into the meat and potatoes of the qualification and the services?
Our office is located on Belchase Highway in Gretna.
Good.
But we do serve the entire New Orleans area as well as the North Shore. We have an office in Hammond as well. But we have patients as far down as Port Sulphur, Louisiana. We have patients in Laplace. We have patients, of course, all throughout Louisiana that we are providing services for.
Great. And you do, we might as well, since I throw it out, and you do have a website. Why don't you tell them that, so that if they want to go online at any point during the show or anytime in the future, they can certainly reach all the information or direction that they would need to approach your organization.
Yes, sir. That website is just heartofhospice.net, and there is a link on there that you can make a referral right on our website.
Wow, fantastic. See how advanced we are now. So the big thing there, folks, it's easy to remember. Of course, it's the name, Heart of Hospice, one word, but the trigger is .net. We're so used to plugging in .com that sometimes my old mind, we'll keep putting .com on a .org or a .net situation. So that's all you need to do. If you get frustrated like me, just look it up and go Google it and see if they can give you the website. I'm sure they'll give you the website address should you be you're having some trouble. Okay, what we're going to do now is we have our first break, and as I mentioned to Jennifer yesterday that we do 2 breaks. We have to submit to the commercial breaks, and then when we come back, we'll go ahead and do our raffle and get into the nuts and bolts. Okay, see you on the other side.
What's up, readers and shakers? It's your girl, Rhonda M. Lawson, sending you a personal invite to the Literary Lounge. Tune in to Horizons with Meet the World Image Solutions each Wednesday at 7 p.m. Central Standard Time for the best in literary conversation. Each week, a different author will join us to talk to their most important readers, you. You can also call in to ask your own questions. So don't forget, each Wednesday at 7 p.m., join us in the lounge for Horizons with Meet the World Image Solutions. See you there.
Hi, I'm Evangelist Melanie Pichon. Listen, I'd like to invite you to view our Forgiven Talk Show every Thursday from 11 a.m. Central Standard Time until 12 noon. We talk about issues, we talk about challenges, we talk about those things really that other folks don't want to talk about. Listen, if you want to talk about something, if you want to give us some suggested ideas, comment below and we'll do our best to get at you. Remember, every Thursday from 11 a.m. Central Standard Time until 12 noon, the Forgiven Talk Show.
We're back. Talk What You Know returns on Wednesday mornings at 8 a.m. We got a brand new co-host by the name of Bob B. And hey, that's me. Also, we got some new features. We're going to be giving away, have a weekly raffle of prizes. There are multiple ways for you to win, and there's a bevy of prizes. So we need you to come on back, join us on Wednesday mornings at 8 o'clock for Talk What You Know on the New Orleans Talk Network.
It gives you better conversation about your quality of life.
Let everyone know you listen to
The New Orleans Talk Network.
Hey, we're back on the Know Your Nonprofit Hour, but we also have to do our weekly raffle that we've been doing since day one. Unfortunately, our latest raffle winner from last week has not contacted me back. I just notified her. We had picked 3 different names, and for some reason, these smaller prizes, people aren't as interested as when we get into the big nitty-gritty. However, I'm still waiting on the last applicant, not last winner, and if she chooses to claim her prize, we will certainly give y'all a shout out either during the week and Facebook announcement, as well as next week show her photo with her prize. But meanwhile, we've got a new prize for you. And again, this is an interesting little thing. It's small. It's a sculpture, a statue, whatever you want to call it, an accessory. It's only 6 inches high, but what it is a composite sculpture of a nautilus, a sea nautilus. I don't know if you know what that is. It's actually a shell, a very intricate carved shell. It's beautiful in real life. Usually they're striped orange and white. Now this one is done of a mixture that, I'm telling you, it's got a little weight to it. It almost feels like concrete. But it's done in natural sand tones. It's got the weather. All these ribs would normally be orange with the white. It's mounted on a little small pole and a heavy little base. Can be used for a lot of things. Be great for a guy. One of the few times we have an accessory like this that would be good for a gentleman. You could give it to him. He could get it to put on his desk. It makes a nice. It could be a paperweight. You could put it on a bookcase and maybe a few books. As long as you have a shelf, you don't have the matching thing to anchor it. But if you put it next to the back of the bookcase wall, you could put a few books up. Anyway, or it could strictly be a decorative item. If you've got a nautilus theme in maybe a summer house or your sunroom. Anyway, if you have an interest, it's a cute little feature, I think. And here's all you have to do. As you know, with our raffle, we are a one-time registration raffle, pretty unique in the industry. You don't have to make phone calls. You don't have to re-register every time a new applicant. All you need to do, there it is. You can go on the website and register, but better, go directly toward me. That's my email, bob@rrevue, of course, .com. We don't put the .com, but we wanted to make it large enough so you can read, like my bad eyes. So you'll send an email to bob@rrevue.com. You need to put 3 pieces of information. That's it. Your full name, first name and last name. You don't have the middle name. Your address, so we can, email address, so we can contact you. That's how we contact you, by email, to let you know you've won, and we'll send you these pictures to see whether you want to claim it. If you do, then you respond back to us, and we will mail it to you at that address. And lastly, we need your zip code so we can register what part of the country or the USA that are actually getting the prizes. So do that one time, and you'll be in it for life. So like Jennifer, by just being on with us today, not just because of her appearance, but just because of the contact, she will be entered into the thing for a future drawing. That's what's good about some of our chefs. Some chefs chatted one. We do not require we allow our own employees, if they in the raffle and they win, they get it. It's not like we exclude people that work here. We don't exclude our guests, no matter what their rank is. So if the random picker selects their name and they want the prize, they get it. And as you know, last year, we're still keeping our fingers crossed. Last year, we got, coming up in about a month, opening tickets for the first weekend of Jazz Fest. That was like I'm getting ready to get some more art out to you. So those are all big interests. So stay tuned. But meanwhile, don't pass up, that's just a little trinket. It is, but it's usable. And remember, it's free. That's the key. Okay, we spent enough time on that. Welcome back to Jennifer. Jennifer, let's go ahead and start. Now, what are the requirements in the old, I hate to say part of the requirement, and that it was very, very restrictive, is that a person had to be, I'm using the word certified, that could be the wrong term, but a doctor would have to certify that a patient would not live more than 6 months. And I know that's been liberalized and changed. Can you tell us, first of all, what are the medical requirements, like not the conditions, because almost all conditions can qualify, but the actual medical requirements for a person to be able to be eligible for hospice?
Well, you are correct in saying that typically a patient is going to have a prognosis of 6 months or less.
Okay.
But keep in mind that's if the diagnosis runs its natural course. So do patients sometimes exceed that 6 month prognosis? They do. But we have certification periods in place where we will continue to make sure that the patient is eligible for hospice care during that 6 months of time.
So we don't want to scare anyone off. Say, oh, well, no. I mean, I guess my poor mom has to be going to die the next day. That's not true. If
That
she
is
has,
not true.
Yeah, if she has a terminal, he or she has a terminal condition, something that obviously is going to be the main cause of their demise, you need to check into it. Like I said, my closest friend, for which Heart of Hospice is doing a wonderful job, was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease about 5 years ago, but 2 years ago became totally disabling. And hospice has never failed. They've, I don't know if it's 6 months or quarterly, the certification occurs. And again, they're checking it. The information is provided by the nurses come at least twice a week. All the other ancillaries, which we're going to get into, all of those are keeping documentations, a medical record, just like a doctor would have on the patient. So they know if the patient is progressing, stabilizing, or decreasing. But there is a specific certification procedure that goes on to show that because the patient goes beyond the 6 months requirement, that they are still eligible. It's not a matter, you can't finite it to be the day and the time that someone's going to pass. You have to have a working, fluid definition, so that way that they can qualify. Okay, go ahead. I hope I haven't belabored
Hospice, only two things have to happen.
Go ahead.
One is that the patient needs to want hospice.
Right.
And two, the physician does have to feel that their prognosis is going to be 6 months or less if the disease runs its natural course. However, like you said, sometimes those things do go on longer than 6 months and continue that certification process.
Right.
But do remember that hospice is an elective service.
Right.
So sometimes we have patients who do graduate from hospice that may start eligible at the beginning of care, but as time goes on, they do show some signs of improvement. At that time, we would discharge the patient to a different level of service, but continue to follow them and make sure that they're getting the care that they need.
Excellent, excellent, excellent. All right, well, let's talk about now. So we have a pretty good idea. I mean, again, if you have a broken arm in itself, that's not going to lead to your demise unless you've got some kind of systemic result from that, where it takes over your whole body. But serious medical conditions, and again, even those can come from a resultant accident, but generally speaking, medical conditions. And we've got to find out the rules there. So now let's talk about what are the services. What's going to make it advantageous for a person to enroll in hospice, or for their families or loved ones to have them participate?
Well, I do want to let everyone know that hospice is definitely more than what people think it is. Just like you said, there's a lot of taboo surrounding the word hospice, and people think it's going to be for patients that may have 2 months to live. But that's not the case these days. Once someone elects the hospice benefit, our team works with the patient and the family to develop an individualized plan of care. So every patient that comes on to hospice care is going to have a unique plan of care. And that plan of care is going to be specific to their particular situation. There are several disciplines involved in the overall hospice team. And again, we can utilize those different team members based on the individualized needs and care of the patient. I can go on to talk about some of the disciplines if you'd like to hear about that, Bob.
Yes, please. Oh, yes, because that's what we want to lay it all on the line so people have a better understanding of why is it important, what can it benefit their loved one or themselves, okay?
Sure. So the team consists of several individuals that are working to make sure that the patient's receiving care. First and foremost, we're going to have a hospice physician, and that hospice physician is going to be making sure that that patient's care is managed and that the patient is comfortable in their home. They guide our nurses as well as home visits for the patients as needed. We
Okay.
also have a registered nurse that would come out to see the patient. And again, because our plans of care are individualized, there's not a set amount of time that
Right.
the nurses are going to come. It's not one day a week or 2 days a week. It's as many days as the patient needs based on their plan of care. The nurse is coming out to help manage the patient at home, provide the family with education, and make sure that the patient is being well cared for. We also have certified nursing assistants, and those certified nursing assistants are coming out to provide personal care for the patient at home to make sure that they are getting a bath, help them wash their hair, do all the basic necessities to make sure that they are clean and comfortable in their home.
Right. That's right. That's important because again, some of these services wouldn't be quote unquote considered medically, medical treatment. But it's just as important for a patient to continue their normal hygienic situation because whether it's their teeth or whatever, that still needs to be maintained. They don't have the opportunity, or maybe they don't have the ability, like the patient we know, to actually do that. She can't, she no longer has that kind of facility to be able to brush her own teeth or wash her face or whatever. So this is an ancillary service that you're not going to get. These are some of the things that are not part of a medical per se regime that you would get in a typical, well, the hospital maybe, but even then sometimes but in a typical other environment. So here's a one big positive advantage there is that his or her, and also now we're talking about the bodily functions, taking care of that as well with regard to assistance, etc. So you can be assured that your loved one is comfortable, clean, and not wallowing in squalor. So go ahead, Jennifer.
Yes, sir. So we also have some other services that are considered non-medical, but still part of the hospice team, and that's going to be a social worker. And the
Okay.
social worker is there to connect the patient and family with resources in the city. If they need to be set up with sitters, or if they need to be connected with Meals on Wheels,
Right.
or they need assistance with getting a loved one home from the military, our social worker is there to provide resources for the patient and the family.
Great. Great.
We also have spiritual caregivers. Our chaplains are available for any spiritual needs or to help connect the family and patient to any spiritual resources in the community as well, which is very
I
important.
was going to say, let me interrupt you there. That, especially in our city, not that we are unique, but because we are such a religious-based city, always found by religious organizations, so many involved, and so many of our citizens are heavily involved in their church. And I don't mean necessarily just going, but from a religious faith. I know this individual again. I know personally. It means the world to her. You have a lovely chaplain who comes out, Brother John, who I've met, and I'm sure he's not the only one. But the important thing is that it's a continuum. She sees him once every week or 2 weeks, and it's that same glow that she would have if she were talking to her individual minister. Maybe not the first time, but as she gets to know that comforting voice, that familiar face, that willingness to pray with her or lead her prayers or pray for her, him or her. That is the key there. So they can slowly feel the trust and the warmth and the love that they had in their religious organization when they were fully active. And I think it's part of the whole holistic approach with regard to making the person feel comfortable. Certainly can't make them normal again, but at the same time, here's something that is so integral to their mental well-being and to their mental and physical health as well, that it should be included. So here's a real big plus that you're not going to get too much at all anywhere else. Go ahead.
And so, in addition to those disciplines we just talked about, we also have a dietitian that
Uh-huh.
can help with any nutritional needs that the patient may have, just there as a consultant. We have speech, occupational, and physical therapy available to patients who may need a little bit of therapy in their home as well. We have volunteers volunteers that volunteer for Heart of Hospice do a wide variety of things, such as um, participate in the care in the patient's home. They may volunteer at facilities to do activities with residents in nursing homes and assisted living centers and things of that nature. But being a volunteer for hospice is definitely a special calling, and we have some wonderful volunteers with Heart of Hospice.
Certainly
And
is.
we also have bereavement coordinators, and
Yeah.
our bereavement coordinators are there also to provide support and just extra love for our family and patients.
Again, it's something you don't think, I mean, we all have to go through that grieving process, and that is individual to each person. But at the same time, just like, I don't say group therapy, but it's the idea you are either meeting one-on-one with this counselor, or oftentimes there are group settings whereby several individuals who have gone through or are going through that process will get together with that same counselor and feel a sense of relief that they're not alone bearing this unruly burden with their loved one, that they can talk about some of the pros and cons, things that have happened that they've experienced, and maybe that it's a shared experience. But it is done, and not only that, usually annually they will do, sometime many of the hospices will do like some kind of bereavement ceremony whereby they honor the past patients who have unfortunately, deceased, predeceased the event, and welcome all the families that are involved there, no matter how far back, to attend. That usually has some religious connotation as well. But
We
again,
do
just
that.
to
Yes.
go ahead.
We have two bereavement services a year, but we like to call them a celebration of life because that's
Good.
really what it is.
Sure.
It's to celebrate those patients that have gone before us and to bring those families back to remember how beautiful their lives were. We have one coming up at the end of April, and we also every year do a butterfly release. It's a
Ah,
very symbolic way to remember those patients that have gone before us. And we invite the entire community to come to our butterfly release, and that's
a-
going to be in October this year.
and I'm sorry. And when is it? And what
In
actually is
October.
entailed? And what is entailed in Butterfly Week?
Again, it's a butterfly release,
Oh,
and so
okay.
it's going to be, very symbolic for our patients, and we would love to give you some more information on that as it gets closer to the event.
Okay. And the actual other annual, biannual ceremony, is it always held at a particular place, or you have rotating places? How do you do that?
Our celebration of life that's coming up on April 21st is going to be at Grace Lutheran Church.
Oh, okay.
We do invite the families of the patients that have passed away over the last few months to come to that celebration, but it is open to anyone who would like to come and be a part of our celebration of life.
Sure. Well, it would be great for someone who, like I say, who's their loved one hasn't passed yet, but certainly can go see how far you all are willing to extend yourself with regard that it doesn't just stop at the demise of the patient. That they're still
It does.
part of an organization that is caring and a community. Let's put it that way. So this would be a great for a relative who hasn't, they haven't lost their loved one yet, just to see how passionate, how intense, how important it is to recognize that person even after he or she is gone.
And so we are going to continue to follow our families for over a year
Wow.
after their loved one passes away, checking in with them, offering support, making sure that they're being cared for after their loved one has been.
Right. We're getting ready to go to break, and I want to mention that, as you probably saw, we always do an announcement of each show we do each week, Facebook, and we have a large base of chefs who watch our show, because two of our weekly shows, you might be familiar, involve chefs, one in the USA and the other with international. And I was very surprised how many people, how many chefs from around the world. That's it's interesting. More the international chefs than the USA chefs gave you all plaudits for doing this show. Each one of them had recognized that in some way, they didn't go into detail, that they had knowledge and that this is a tremendous educational experience. That's what they said. So that is great. To think that a particular industry that you might not connotate with this would be
Yes, sir.
would be knowledgeable and paying tribute to your service is, I think, something noteworthy that I hadn't told you about it, but I wanted to pass it along because I was very impressed with that. Really was.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Now it is time for our second break. I'm sorry we've have to interrupt. We'll be back in a few minutes and pick up where we left off. Enjoy these commercials. Michael.
Are you looking for a home to live stream your next event? Give us a call here at Bethesda Community Event Center, the only place on the Gulf Coast that can host and broadcast live your wedding reception, your baby shower, business seminar, and any other special event. Give us a call at 504-708-9454 for more details.
Listen up. Your customers, our listeners, could be hearing about your business right now. Yeah, right now. Don't miss out on the opportunity to advertise with NewOrleansTalkNetwork.com. Call our business department today at 504-475-4793 to hear about our great rates. NewOrleansTalkNetwork.com. We provide the people, you provide the business.
Our listeners are as important as our guests. Join in on the conversation. 504-341-8255. The New Orleans Talk Network. Nobody gives you better conversation about your quality of life.
Let everyone know you listen to
The New Orleans Talk Network.
Okay, welcome back. It's Bob's Variety Hour, and we're hitting it's Know Your Nonprofit Week, and we're really hitting on a heavy-duty service that is something that, as I mentioned in the beginning, that perhaps we don't all want to think about because we all feel some sense of immortality or don't want to recognize the inevitability of this situation. However, we are so pleased that organizations like Heart of Hospice, for which Jennifer represents, are there now to help us with this endeavor. To help us before it happens, all during the tenure, and then even as we just spoke, after the situation. It's something that we all will go through to some extent, and we need to be a little bit more open about it instead of just pushing it to, oh no, I get too many pressing things. It's something, just whether it's life insurance, all the things that we don't like to do, like pay the bills, it's just something that should have some time for us in regards to our future planning, because it can happen to any, and does happen to almost all of us, not just one person in your family. Every one of us are going to pass, so it just depends on whether or not we want to be able to avail ourselves, if possible, of such a worthwhile service. Jennifer's doing a bang-up job giving us information on the services that her organization offers to these individuals, and we're hoping that you call, as we mentioned, you can contact them at heartofhospice.net for any more details, and I'm sure Jennifer at some point and any of our customer service people will be glad to speak to you and give you any of the information. I'll review a lot of the things that we're talking about and provide more details. Jennifer, I have a couple of questions. And again, folks, I'm not used to, most of our shows are coming from us because of my TV background, where we don't have that back radio where it's interactive. But it's so important today to be interactive. So I don't give that phone number out or that text number, but I should at every show, at least multiple times. So especially in something like this, we would really welcome any question for Jennifer to answer so that you all will be more comfortable in understanding what the service is and seeing how it may apply at some point to your family. And again, I know today the youngsters don't like to call on the phone, so you can text the same number. Our staff member Mike will pass the information on, and then we'll pass it on to Jennifer so that way she can address your question. So the important thing, our talk line, text line is area code 504, New Orleans code 504-341-8255, and 8255 stands for talk. So 504-341-8255. Avail yourself of the last 15, 20 minutes and go ahead and either make that call or send a text in so we can get your individual concerns addressed, either now or at least how she can get the answer to you. Anything else you want to tell us, Jennifer? Because we still have plenty of time here left, about 20 minutes. I do have a couple of questions, but I'd rather you go ahead and finish your program and see what we got.
So there are some other services that come along with the hospice benefit.
Good.
Once someone elects it, and one of those things is medications.
All right.
A lot of people have problems with pharmacy costs and how will I get my medicine if I go on hospice care.
Exactly.
And when hospice comes in, we are going to help manage those medications, and any medications that are going to be related to the hospice care that we are providing are going to be covered under the hospice benefit, and we're going to provide those.
That's what's so amazing, because that is, unfortunately, even the younger folk, but as we age, we get more and more chronic or almost permanent medications. And, each one, whether they have a small copay or not, adds up, especially when you're having multiples. And even more important, as the severity of the illness comes, the drugs don't come as inexpensive as the normal, something a little less severe. So to see that anything involved directly with this condition is going to be covered for you all and supplied via some pharmacy that they deal with our service. So you don't even have to have your family member, I know in our situation, family member doesn't even have to go out to get the prescriptions. It's delivered to their door. Is that standard operation?
Absolutely.
So here's a major concern that you can do away with. I'm running low on this such and such amount, and I got to go running quick and get that filled, and I'm short of cash right there. So here, that's the limit. That's noted by the weekly visits of the people who come, how their medications are holding up, the volume, and they go ahead and make those additional requests in advance so that the medications will arrive in more than an adequate time to continue the administration without any kind of gap in time. Okay, what else? That's a tremendous benefit. Thank you for bringing that one up.
Another thing is, I think a common myth with hospice is that people think that they will have to not take any treatment or do any treatment once they elect services.
This is part of one of my questions. Go ahead.
And that's not true. So if a patient is receiving radiation, or they are receiving chemotherapy or dialysis or physical therapy, and those things are making them feel good and they still have hope. Part of hospice is not coming in to take hope away from any patient.
Right.
They're there to meet the patient where they are. So if the physician tells us that the patient is eligible for hospice care and the patient does want the service, that patient can continue to receive their treatment and get hospice care.
Excellent. Let me go ahead and jump in with my question then, because this happened in a situation. You can also have, like you mentioned, another situation that happened that, God forbid this happens to someone, but suppose a person would break their bone, like our particular patient has of course a hospital bed, but she's able to she wants to be in the normal flow of things instead of being locked up in a bedroom, even though it's her bedroom. So she's at home in the sunroom in her sofa. Unfortunately, she has a tendency to roll, so she has to be watched. But if she would fall and break, God forbid, a bone, and she would have to go to this is something that your staff can't address here at the house, so she would have to go, whether it's the emergency room or the hospital. That is going to be allowed and covered. It's not going to be something that, oh, no, that has nothing to do with her condition. Am I explaining it correctly?
Yes, sir. So when a patient is on hospice care, we know that they want to be at home and no one wants to go to the hospital. So anything that may arise that may be symptomatic or pain related, those are easy things for us to be able to come out to the house and care for the patient at home. But yes, in a situation where a patient would fall and maybe break their arm or they would need to go get stitches, can they go to the hospital and receive care? Absolutely, and that does not affect their hospice benefits in any way.
Excellent, thank you. Because in the old days there were fine lines there drawn with regard to whether that should be allowed or should affect their eligibility. And I'm glad to hear it doesn't, because it's certainly none of their fault, and it certainly doesn't take away from their seriousness of their condition. Okay, go ahead and continue, because I do have one more question along those lines.
Sure. Another question that we commonly get from patients and families that are inquiring about hospice services is, how is hospice paid for?
Right, very
So
good.
the answer to that is, we are going to care for any patient regardless of their ability to pay. That being said, Medicare and Medicaid do cover hospice care, and most private insurances are going to have a hospice benefit as
Right,
well.
right.
But again, any patient that's eligible for services, regardless of their ability to pay, is going to receive care from Heart of Hospice.
That is so important, because in the older days, and even today, I'm sure there's still some that only will take either medically certified or private pay guarantee. So here's one where, and you're not the only one, but there are ones that have the nonprofit component with regard to the facility for people who cannot pay. You still don't close your doors thinking that they are not worthy because they can't give you dollars, whether that you personally, but your organization. So very important to stress, folks. So that makes it super worthwhile for you to consider. So if you had any other reservations, well, like medical care at the end is so expensive. It is, but you have it addressed. As she said, obviously, if Medicare and or Medicaid pays for your regular coverage before you became eligible, then that's going to continue. And there are provisions in the Medicare benefit providing for hospice, very, very extensive. A lot of these benefits that we're talking about are all covered by the Medicare situation. Medicaid as well has their provisions. And private insurance, as she mentioned, way back when I was in insurance, I developed some products. It was a hard sell to insurance companies to want to pay that. That seemed like an unusual situation and a necessity, and it was too experimental, even though the service wasn't. But from their way of thinking, that's not treating something that they have right now, and da-da-da-da. But more and more, even group insurances and individuals have recognized the value of this organization, how it kind of relieves them, and that's what they saw. They learned from the economic part of it that it's relieving them from payment of sub-services that they would normally have to pay for, and now being transferred to the hospice. So you have nothing from the financial concerns to prohibit you from availing yourself of this service from yourself and for your members. Go ahead. Anything else, dear?
In regards to insurance and the like, we do have another website which is for our foundation, which is the nonprofit aspect, and the Heart of Hospice Foundation.org. And there we take donations to help patients, whether it's a financial crisis with a bill, or they want to have a birthday party or an anniversary party, things they may not have the financial resources to do. Our foundation is starting to give small grants to these patients and families to help their wishes come true during this time.
Yeah, very good, very good. And that's why she's telling you the separate organizations, not really a foundations, allow them nonprofits to, one, get grants from any source really, as well as taking in individual donations, whether you have a family member or a loved one involved or ever will have, and using those sources to help pay for those folks who don't have any coverage or don't have the financial wherewithal. Anything else? Because like I said, I have one last question.
Well, why don't you go with your questions and maybe it'll...
Again, it revolves around the hospital. There are some situations, and I asked you a little bit about this to check, because there are some hospices that do not have any relationship for final care with a hospital. Some actually have their own institution, even though those early on have kind of faded because of the expense of operating an inpatient facility. But I believe you said you have some. So if a family, or if need be, that the patient has to be transferred to the hospital in its final stages, whether the family just can no longer, feel that they can face that awesome situation, you do have, is that right? And you can tell us a little bit more about that, facilities with an inpatient facility that they could be transferred if need be.
So that's a great question. Well, I say we, but hospice in general offers 4 different levels of care. And so I can go over those 4 levels of care with you. The most common, of course, level of care is routine home care. And those are for patients that are receiving hospice care in their home. Another level of care that we have is called continuous care. And so that would be for patients who are in a medical crisis in their home and may some short-term, more intense care to stabilize the medical crisis in the home. We also offer short-term respite care. And respite care is going to be for patients who are in the home, and let's say their wife that cares for them has to have surgery, or she's going out of town for a couple of days, and there's no one to watch her husband or care for her husband. We have short-term respite care contracts that patients can go into a facility for a short period of time for that respite day, and then transfer back to their home facility. And then finally, we have inpatient care that we talked about, and that is going to be for patients who are requiring a higher level of care than what can be given at home. Either a pain crisis or symptom crisis that, despite our best efforts at home, that patient really needs some more intense management. In that instance, we do offer the general inpatient care. We work with Passages Hospice to provide that inpatient level of care for our patients at their facility.
And expanding on that a little bit, and these facilities are not necessarily far away from the vicinity of the patient, right? That their family has to travel an extensive amount of time to get there. You do have local contracts or affiliations, is that correct?
Yes, sir. We work with several nursing homes in the city, and then Passages Hospice is in New Orleans, right off of River Road. Excellent.
Okay. All right, well, we're just about out of time. One last parting thing from you, and then I'll give you our thanks. And I know one thing. Let's tell the folks, I know we've told them about your website, heartofhospice.net. What about, can you share your general phone number, so should they want to call after the show today or anytime in the future, they can have it available?
Absolutely. Our staff is working around the clock.
I know that part.
Any questions, or you want to make a referral, or you just want more information about our services, our number is 1-844-464-0411.
Why don't we go over it one more time, since it's not a local number. It's 800
Yes,
number.
sir. That's 1-844-464-0411.
Excellent. Okay. So there, folks, we've given you, I think, a pretty in-depth. Jennifer's just done a bang-up job, and we want to thank her organization for freeing her up for this time. But that's part of her responsibility with regard to getting out there and getting the word out, so that way she can have you avail yourself of your services. So thank you again, Jennifer, to everyone there. Keep up the good work with my patients. I love the people that you send us to that patient, and they just make us feel like we're also an extension of your family.
Thank you so much.
Good. We appreciate it, folks. We'll see you next week. We go back to Chef's Chad USA. I don't know who it is, but for those who are interested in the food, check us next week.
Our listeners are as important as our guests. Join in on the conversation. 504-341-8255, the New Orleans Talk Network.